Welcome, horror lovers. I'm Pete, and today we're going to embark on a journey through some of the darkest legends in the world. If you're new here, subscribe and activate notifications so you don't miss any terrifying stories. The legend of the Mexican lechuza is one of the most terrifying in Mexican popular folklore, deeply rooted in popular tradition and marked by stories that have been passed down through generations. The tale of La Lechuza is a mix of fear, mystery, and superstition, mainly told in rural areas, but also in urban regions. The figure of the lechuza in Mexico shares some similarities with the Brazilian legend, but with specific characteristics related to Mexican culture and beliefs. The origin of the Mexican lechuza legend dates back to pre-Columbian times and blends indigenous traditions with Spanish influences. The lechuza is often associated with the figure of a woman who, through witchcraft, transforms into a giant owl. This transformation is linked to witchcraft rituals, especially those practiced by women known as curanderas, healers, who have the power to heal or harm through supernatural means. However, in some versions, the lechuza is an ordinary woman who, after making a pact with the devil or with evil forces, becomes a nightmarish creature. In Mexico, the owl itself holds significant meaning in indigenous cultures. Among the Nahuas, for instance, owls were seen as creatures linked to death and spirits. The owl was considered a messenger bird of the gods, especially of Mictlantecutli, the god of death in Aztec mythology. Thus, the lechuza can also be seen as an entity connected to the crossing between the world of the living and the dead. The figure of the lechuza overlaps with the traditions of witches or shaneks, spirits or supernatural beings that deceive and confuse mortals. In some versions of the legend, the lechuza was a condemned woman who, after a dark pact with malevolent forces, came to inhabit the form of a giant owl, wandering the night in search of vengeance or prey. The lechuza is described in many ways, but the key features are always the same: a woman transformed into an owl. In many versions, she is a normal woman during the day, but at night, she transforms into a huge owl with wide wings, sharp talons, and glowing eyes. The transformation is often linked to the use of witchcraft or a pact with the devil. Giant owl. One of the most striking characteristics is the enormous size of the bird, which can be up to 3 times larger than an ordinary owl. She is described as an owl with red or yellow eyes that glow in the dark. Terrifying scream. The scream of the lechuza is something that instills great fear in people. In many stories, the sound she makes is a hoot or a scream that can be confused with the cry of a baby. Some versions claim that the scream is so intense it can paralyze the victim with fear or, in more extreme cases, attract death. Vengeful and predatory. The lechuza is a creature of vengeance. She feeds on human flesh, especially children. In some versions of the legend, the lechuza kills those who encounter her or challenge her, while in others, she feeds on lost souls. Reports of the Mexican lechuza are abundantly described in stories passed down from generation to generation. Although these stories vary depending on the region and the person telling them, there are some common points that always appear. Appearances on dark nights. Many people claim to have seen the lechuza at night, flying from tree to tree or perched on rooftops, watching the inhabitants of a house. When someone spots her, it's common to hear reports of a sudden chill or a feeling of imminent danger. Appearances at windows. In various stories, the lechuza approaches homes, especially windows or rooftops, where she can be seen as a woman with long hair, wearing dark clothes. When someone looks directly at her, the figure quickly transforms into the giant owl. Stories of fatal encounters. Some testimonies talk about direct encounters with the lechuza, where the bird attacks or chases its victims. People who have had these encounters often claim that they were followed by the lechuza on their way home or while in their rural properties. Baby's cry. A notable characteristic of the reports is the imitation of a baby's cry. In many stories, the lechuza attracts its victims by emitting the sound of a crying baby from a distance. When people approach to investigate, they end up encountering the owl or a threatening figure. Testimonies of disappearances. Some local stories talk about children who disappeared after hearing the cry of a lechuza. The legend suggests that the owl kidnaps the children, taking their souls to an unknown place. These disappearances cause panic in communities, who often associate these events with the presence of the lechuza. The legend of the bottle tree is one of the most mysterious and chilling stories in Brazilian folklore, especially in rural and remote areas. Although its exact origin is unclear, the myth has many variations involving supernatural entities, curses, and vengeful spirits linked to a peculiar tree. The bottle tree is often described as a tree with a trunk shaped like a glass bottle or a figure resembling a human, with roots resembling feet or hands. This eerie, unsettling appearance is what makes it so terrifying. Here is a detailed version of the legend, including testimonies, sightings, real-life cases, and its relevance today. Legend is not well documented, but it is deeply rooted in Brazilian folklore, particularly in rural communities, where mysticism and local beliefs still hold significant power. Like many Brazilian legends, it may have ties to ancient rituals, indigenous beliefs, or popular religious practices. While the name, pé de garrafa, is commonly used in certain regions, the tree is also known in other areas by different names, such as tree of evil or haunted tree. One of the most common versions of the legend tells of a tree growing in a clearing deep in the forest. This tree is believed to have been planted by an evil spirit or a sorcerer, who, upon dying, cursed it to grow into a form resembling either a human or an animal. The tree's roots, which resemble feet or hands, symbolize the victim who was transformed into the cursed tree, always seeking revenge on those who approach it. The peculiar shape of the tree's trunk, similar to a glass bottle, and the roots resembling human limbs, are key features that create the unsettling and macabre nature of this legend. These shapes are believed to represent the cursed individual or spirit, forever bound to the tree and driven by a thirst for vengeance. The tree is seen as a gateway to the supernatural, a place where spirits can dwell. According to the legend, it doesn't merely grow, it actively feeds off the energy and life force of anyone who dares to approach it. In some versions, the tree is described as alive during the night, changing its form and attracting those who wander too close. The spirit of the tree. In some versions of the story, the tree itself is inhabited by an evil spirit or even a vengeful ghost. The spirit of the tree is said to be that of a woman who was murdered after being betrayed. Her soul, seeking revenge, transforms into the tree, which grows stronger with each soul it captures. 2. Danger for the unwary. The tree is believed to punish those who approach it or touch its trunk without following certain rites or warnings. According to the myth, people who come too close begin to feel an overwhelming sense of dread or sickness, as if something invisible is pulling them in. In some accounts, those who dare to touch the tree disappear mysteriously, only to be never seen again, or they become cursed and are haunted by strange visions and nightmares. While there are no official documented cases to prove the existence of the bottle tree, many stories and personal accounts circulate in rural communities, perpetuating the mystery and fear surrounding this tree. In certain regions, there have been reports of people going missing after venturing into the forest, never to return. One famous case, for instance, involves a young man named João from a small village in Minas Gerais, who, after hearing stories about the bottle tree, decided to go out and see it for himself. Hours after he ventured into the woods, His friends reportedly heard his distant screams, but were unable to find him. Juan's body was never discovered, and the locals believe he was taken by the tree. The story is still shared among the older generations, serving as a cautionary tale. Another account comes from a hunter living in Goiás, who, while searching for game in a remote area of the forest, found a tree with a trunk resembling a bottle. Intrigued, the hunter touched the tree and immediately began to feel an intense pressure in his chest, as though someone were watching him. He hurried back to the village, but after that night, he began to have constant nightmares and felt a heavy, oppressive energy in his house. Some of the villagers confirmed that she had been haunted by the curse of the tree. Another popular story from the folklore mentions a man who, while walking through the woods, encountered a tree with a very thick trunk, bent upwards and shaped like broken glass bottles. As the man approached, he claimed that he saw the trunk move as though it were alive. He was hypnotized by the sight, but when he tried to touch the trunk, he said, "An invisible." So, what do you think? Leave your opinion in the comments, and if you know other scary stories, share them with us. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more spine-chilling stories. Until next time.